So we're going to jump into the man overboard procedure. I wanted to bring that up because I was on board Mako when we were training for the Southport race, and we just had, we really talked about our man overboard procedure before we went out. We set up an evening training run where we were going to leave the dock about 4 PM and go and do some in-harbour practice until after dark. And then when it was dark, we were going to do our man overboard drill before we head offshore and we sail offshore overnight and come back tomorrow. And, it was blowing 30 plus knots from the south. So our plan was to go up around Bird Island and come back, which we basically did that night. But for obvious reasons, we just threw a brand new team together on board the boat. And only a couple of us had sailed at all on the boat. So it was very important that we get this right and we practice it, and so that if we had an issue that night, we were going to be able to bring our friends home and safe. The biggest thing is, you've got to practice it. You've got to actually physically go out there and do it. People panic under pressure. So you've got to build that habit. You've got to make it habitual, that it automatically happens when someone goes over the side. You need to talk the plan through with the crew. This can happen, while you're still ashore, before you leave the dock, just while you're in a nice, calm environment where they've got time to ask questions and really think about each step. Walk it through at the dock and iron out the kinks. Literally pick up the pieces of equipment while you're tied up at the marina and pretend to throw them over the side, so that everyone knows exactly what items they're supposed to pick up and throw. A lot of people get really uncomfortable with throwing expensive equipment over the side into the water. And so you find when people do drills, they say, oh, let's just pretend we throw the stuff. But, you need to make sure everyone knows you do need to throw it, and be very comfortable throwing as much as you possibly can. Don't worry about not recovering our expensive safety gear. Just think about the fact that that's the cost of maybe getting someone back safely. Once you've walked it through at the dock and everyone knows what their job is, actually go out on the water and do it. It is harder than it looks, but if you practice it and you get your approach down pat, it'll give you and your team the best chance at bringing a friend home safe. Once you've done the drill, that's when you revise the plan. You think about what could you have done better, what would have made it easier for you. You update the rest of the crew, and you come back and you practice again at regular intervals throughout the season. I probably don't think that once a year is enough. You need to figure out how often crew changes on board your boat and how often you think you need to do that drill. But it's definitely something that is worth doing, particularly when we're sailing offshore on a regular basis. So I've literally taken the plan that we had for Mako and I've written it down into the slideshow here, and I've managed to find some cool little clips on YouTube that'll help us explore our man overboard procedure. But step one, I think everyone's fairly familiar with, is when someone goes over the side, someone's got to shout man overboard. It's got to be loud, and someone's got to become the spotter who watches the man overboard and points at the man overboard. And they don't stop looking, they don't stop pointing. That's their job until that person's back on board.
As soon as someone falls in the water, the person who sees them fall in, right away, they want to yell at the top of their lungs, "Crew overboard!" Just so that everyone on the boat is aware that, hey, we've got an emergency here. That person then becomes what we call the spotter. The spotter is going to point at the person in the water and just keep their finger pointing at them. As they're pointing, they want to make sure that they get into a place on the boat that's not going to get in the way of what's going on, but they want to be really visible to the helmsman so the helmsman can see exactly where they're pointing. We do this drill all the time with sailing students, and inevitably they'll turn away and be like, hey, go ahead and grab the boat hook. And when they turn back, they've already lost sight of them. You'd be amazed at how quickly you lose sight of someone, even in 1 to 2 foot waves. When all you're looking at is ahead, you'll lose sight of them really quickly. So very important, spotter, got to keep pointing at them. Don't take their eyes off and just point. They're pointing so that the helmsman knows as they're maneuvering around where that person is in the water.
Yeah, that last part of the video is actually quite relevant there. You know, someone floating in the water potentially look about the size of a coconut. You know, so it's pretty easy to lose sight of a coconut, even in no swell whatsoever. So as soon as you've identified there's a man overboard, you've got someone pointing and spotting, the next thing that happens is you send someone down below to, or hopefully you've got a button on deck, but someone has to press the man overboard button on your GPS. So that should be part of the induction process when someone comes on board. And, you know, you should probably think about making sure everybody knows where that button is every time you go out sailing. Once you've pressed the man overboard button, all crew are back on deck. If you've got split watches, if it's a long race, all right, all crew are back on deck, and the engine is started. You know, it's probably still sitting in neutral. You're probably still sailing, but that engine's started so that when you need that propulsion, you're going to have it. You know, you need every resource you've got available to you when you're trying to recover that MOB. So when someone goes down to press the MOB button, that's when you can do that.
Every boat's GPS or navigation system should be equipped with a man overboard button. Whether it's at the helm position, navigation station, or both, hitting the MOB button is a must. When pushed, the MOB button locks in your current position as a new waypoint, overrides your current course settings, and gives you the range and bearing readings back to the MOB waypoint. You can imagine how critical this is at night or any time should visual contact with the man overboard be lost. All the immediate responses at position 1 really only take a few seconds, so you will not be far from your crewmate in the water.
Okay, the next on the list is that if it's dark, you know, turn on the torches and throw them overboard. Just get them in the water, get everything bright you can out in the water. I've kind of highlighted this point because when we did this on Mako, we did this in the basin. All right, it was dead calm water. There was a bit of breeze, but it was flat. You know, the waves don't have a chance to build up. We turned on a couple of dolphin torches and we threw them in the water. And really, once we were 1 or 2 boat lengths away, we could barely see them. Okay, so turn as much bright and reflective gear, turn it on, turn the torches on, throw it over the side, get as much in the water as you possibly can. But yeah, we threw the dolphin torch in the water with it switched on, and it was very difficult to see unless we were bright on top of it. Then we also released all the safety gear, which for us is stored on the starboard side. So we said to everyone, if there's a man overboard, everything on the starboard side of the boat, at the transom, everything goes. Just unhook it all and throw it in the water and get as much in the water as you possibly can.
Man overboard! That's a flotation out!
Immediately upon hearing "man overboard," the nearest person to the stern, and it may be the helmsman, pulls the pin to release the Mom 8 or tosses a similar self-launching marker. At the same time, cockpit crew should grab whatever flotation devices are at hand and throw them overboard too. Boat cushions, life jackets, water bottles, whatever is close at hand that will float. These items will give the man overboard options of things to grab and hold on, while also creating a field of floating items to help spot the man overboard.
So once all the flotation was in the water, our next move was someone had to note the heading, and whoever's steering had to maintain that heading just while we got the boat under control and we got set up to be able to turn around and go back to recover that man overboard. And of course, if it's nighttime, we had a lot of glow sticks as well. So it was someone's job was going to be to crack a glow stick every, at regular intervals and throw the glow stick in the water as well, just so it gave us something when we turn around that says we're on the right track. We're headed back to where we came from. And now this was the manoeuvre that we practiced. It was an upwind quick stop manoeuvre. And the idea was that as soon as someone fell off the boat, as soon as we had a man overboard, we would have put the boat into a hove to position by tacking and leaving the headsail trimmed on the wrong side as soon as possible, and then start to loop around and line up to pick up our man overboard.
Let's look at the upwind quick stop in brief, then we'll go into more details. At position 1, the boat loses the man overboard. At 2, the boat quickly tacks, leaving the jib aback. This dramatically slows the boat and keeps it near the victim. At 3, the boat reaches away and, in position 4, falls off to a run, dropping the jib, then jibing at position 5. Once well below the victim in position 6, the boat comes up to a close reach and sails to the victim, trimming and luffing the main to control speed as necessary. At position 7, the boat slows to a crawl and connects with the victim through a thrown line or by coming alongside. Then the crew recovers the man overboard.
Okay, so that really accurately demonstrates what our intentions were. But I've highlighted this one again because we did practice this, and we practiced this about 4 or 5 times before we actually were able to get the man overboard back on board, which was a dolphin torch. Okay, so by the time we were able to hook the torch with the boat hook, I think it was our 5th attempt. And the biggest struggle there was that we couldn't get the boat slow enough on that angle. The mainsail still had drive in it, and it was gusty, which meant it was shifty, and it kept powering up and wanting to sail away. So what we found was that we actually had to run further downwind so that we could approach more into the breeze and get that bow up into the wind a bit higher to allow us to stop the boat. The first 2 or 3 runs, the person steering the boat at the time forgot that we actually had the engine switched on. So they weren't actually trying to use the reverse gear at all or trying to use forward to push the boat through a tack if we were low speed. But, we made it really clear that when we've got a man overboard, we switch the engine on, and if we need that extra help with the engine to propel the boat through a manoeuvre or to try and stop the boat, you've got that available to you. It's okay to practice with that. While you get it right, and then it's probably important to practice without it as well, in case you foul a rope around your prop or something like that. But yeah, we found we had to run a lot deeper than that so that we could approach it closer into the breeze. Now we're just going to talk about doing the quick stop with a life sling. This was the plan for us if we would have found us sailing downwind, potentially with a kite up. This was the plan for us to retrieve the man overboard when we were sailing downwind. Before we do that, I'm going to activate another poll, a question to you all. I'm going to ask, what happens when you deploy the life sling? So here's a question up on your screen. What happens when you deploy the life sling? Have you actually seen a life sling deployed? Do you know what it's going to look like? Do you know what to do with it? It's something that a lot of our boats have clipped onto the life rails on race day. And a lot of people always say that when you have a man overboard, you throw it over the side, but what is it and what do you do with it? Got about 20 something answers come in. We're looking very positive. I think 90% of us have hit the mark there. Okay, another couple of seconds. Okay, so a few of us have said the person in the water to it, so that it can help keep them afloat. It may do, but most of us got it right. Primarily, the boat, when the boat deploys the life sling, the idea is that you tow the life sling behind you, and then you can do circles around your man overboard. And it's kind of like towing a ski rope. And you do circles until it rests up against your man overboard and they can catch onto it. And we'll just watch this video, which is, I think it explains it pretty well.
The quick stop method can be improved by using a life sling. The life sling is very important for short-handed racers and cruisers, as you will not have a pointer or extra people to handle sails. The life sling is a floating collar-like sling with a 150-foot long recovery line, the bitter end of which is tied to the stern of the boat. It's easily deployed when necessary.
Man overboard! Flotation!
You begin a life sling quick stop the same way you would with a regular quick stop. Deploy handy flotation and tack the boat with the jib aback.
Right where it is! Keep the jib where it is!
From the jib aback position, toss the life sling out of its bag. The line will feed out by itself. You may want to start the engine here as before, but watch out that you do not cross the life sling's tow line. Circle the man overboard as usual, but leave the jib up and unfurled as you may need it later in maneuvering. Also, keep a few knots of speed on to maintain steerage way. Circle the MOB at a close distance, but you need not get close enough to hit the MOB. Keep a bit of speed a few knots. This may involve multiple circles like picking up a water skier, but just keep tacking and jibing without touching sheets. Keep an eye on the tow rope until the MOB grabs the line of the life sling. The victim can grab it, work his way to the sling collar, and put that over his head. Now, stop the boat dead in the water. You do not want to pull the victim through the water at any speed, even at 2 knots. Once you have furled the jib and dropped the main, you pull the victim to the boat and tie him to a convenient cleat. Run a halyard to a loop in the life sling line. Recover the victim by hoisting the MOB out on the halyard, nestled in the life sling harness.
Yeah, so that's the life sling that most of us have got on the back of the boat every Sunday. In our procedure, we said the life sling is on the port side of the boat. All right, so we had all the flotation we were going to throw was all on the starboard side, and then the life sling was on the port side. And then we were going to steam or we were going to sail in decreasing circles around the man overboard until the float reaches that man overboard, that person in the water. And then our plan was to stall the boat, stop the boat, haul in the line and bring that person alongside. We were very specific about being alongside and not at the stern of the boat. If you're offshore and you've got a lot of swell and wave action, the back of the boat can lift up out of the water and then slap back down. It may not be the best place to be bringing someone back on board, even though you've got that low cutout on many racing yachts. It was still our plan that we were going to bring that person alongside midships, use a spinnaker halyard or the rig retrieval block and tackle in the life swing bag, and then haul that person back on board. Now, when we did our drill, we did have those little couple of hiccups, like we had that bit of trouble approaching the person in the water. We were too fast. We just couldn't slow the boat enough. So we had to adjust our plan, and we had to run lower downwind so that we could come up into the breeze a bit higher, a bit slower. We also adjusted the plan so that we could use the motor to stop the boat. And of course, we had trouble sighting the torch in the water as well. So at night, we were really going to go overboard to get as many torches and glow sticks in the water just to help us find that person. If you can get a dam buoy would probably be the most helpful bit of equipment that you could deploy that would make it the person in the water more and more visible. It's nice and tall, and it'll be reflective, and often has a strobe light as well. So anything you can get in the water would be really helpful. I'm just going to watch a quick summary video.
Practice is key. There are many things that contribute to a successful man overboard recovery. Each boat is a bit different, and each set of wind and wave conditions are also different. You need to practice on your boat with your crew in various kinds of conditions to expand your instincts and to know your boat's behaviors. Developing these seamanship skills is critical. Go out in heavy air and practice. Put a strobe on a tall buoy and try nighttime evolutions. Don't hesitate to practice both upwind and downwind quick stop. Use a tall buoy or similar device, as a cockpit cushion will blow away too fast to be realistic. Even if it's calm out, run through the procedures we've presented in this video. If you're drifting around waiting for racing to start, put someone into the water and practice different MOB recovery techniques. But put a person overboard only in daylight hours for safety. Practice makes perfect and will save lives. I'm Gary Jobson for the Storm Trysail Foundation, asking you to share these man overboard recovery techniques with everyone with whom you race or cruise. Here's to safe sailing at sea.
Pause that one. Okay, so I'm not here trying to come up with a man overboard procedure for your boat. That's something you need to go away and do with your team and your crew for your boat. But when you do it, make sure you practice it. And actually, as that video said, practicing it at night occasionally is really, really valuable. It really helps everyone see why each of those steps is so important. And so even if you're doing the drill in flat water, that person who's pointing becomes all that more important, because it's dark and you can't see, and so that just can be a bit of a simulation of what happens even in daylight hours when the waves are up and the swell's up. So just having that practice, familiarity with that maneuver is going to be really key to be able to do it successfully when it does hit the fan, and you do need to do it for real.